Hello, and welcome to Digifabricators, the show where we learn how makers and artists use their computer driven tools for fun, art, and profit. I'm your host, Jeff Stein, aka A Weird Guy, and with me is my talented but humble co host, Al Schultz of New York Woodworks. How you doing tonight, Al?
I'm doing wonderful. Good evening. How are you, sir?
Oh, not bad, not bad. Trying to keep warm up here in the cold north. The
Yeah,
usual.
yeah. We had a little snow to plow this week, and other than that, just head down working in the shop.
Sounds like fun. All right, let's fire off our official disclaimer here. Even though we pretend to be experts on the internet, I would like to point out that neither of us have any actual training and are just guys winging it in our shops and learning as we go. All advice provided is based on our personal experience and possibly inaccurate assumptions, and is worth exactly what you pay for it. If listening to this show causes you to take out a loan to buy new and expensive digital tools, you may tell your spouse that it was our fault, but do so at your own risk. So we have a guest tonight who can tame a T-Rex with a laser and prints droids that are lifelike and life-sized. He's also a guy who's figured out how to afford his filament addiction. Please welcome Jacob Daugherty of Other Dog Design.
Good evening.
How you doing?
Good
Yeah, I'm
evening.
good. Good. I think you've distilled down everything I do, which is basically I just working to afford my filament addiction.
It's for those of you that can't see because we don't record in video. All I see is filament on the wall behind you there in various stages of use.
Oh yeah, that's only half. What you're saying, there's a whole nother wall over here that you can't see in this mirror.
that's
So
all. That's a lot of plastic.
I need all the colors, all the colors.
Yeah, my addiction's getting me. I've probably got, I don't know, I'd say 35 rolls right now, and it's almost exclusively PLA. I've got a couple of PETGs and what's that rubber one? TPU. I think
Right,
I've got one of those
right.
just to play with if I feel like it. But
I've with my racks that I just finished redoing the room with the racks on the wall. I can hold right at 200 rolls plus within the like what's on the machines. The machines will hold another uh, 24, 20 no a whole another 28 on top of that. So right at 230 is what I can hold. And so my rule now is if I want another color, I have to make room. So there's a handful of old ones that are going to have to go away for new ones to come in because I'm not going to build another rack. If I can't get it done with 230 rolls, I'm doing something wrong. So maybe 231, 234.
right. Well, I mean, you can always find something to print with some of those older colors that you want to
For sure.
retire. You can just, I mean, it's not like we're throwing it away. Just push it through the machine.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Now, now as a as a person, let's assume you might be talking to somebody that doesn't know anything about 3D printing. Well, let's call him Al.
Right.
And what is I hear like letters like PTG and PLA and
Okay. So
mesomorphine
PLA
extrusion.
is your most basic kind of starter filament. It's the easiest one uh, to print. It's a bioplastic. It's made. It's not a petroleum product. It's based off of like cellulose. So I think it comes from a lot of it. I think comes from corn.
Also, it's
Uh,
green.
so it's somewhat green. Um, so it's pretty like it's more of a filament that's good for decorative type models. It won't withstand UV for extended periods of time. It won't stand high heat. Like if you had it in your car in the summer, it would melt. So but that's what makes it not great for that is what makes it easy to print, which is a low melting temperature. It melts quickly
Okay.
and it melts at a relatively low temperature.
Okay.
But that's your most basic filament, and because of that, it's the one that has the most variety. Multicolor, matte, glossy,
Hmm.
sparkle, glow in the dark, all of that. Getting beyond that, you have something like PETG, which is very similar. As a matter of fact, I guarantee you have some in your house right now. It's what milk jugs are made out of, so it's a really common
Okay.
uh, plastic for consumer products. Prints almost as easily. Not quite as much variety because of the nature of the plastic. It's always going to be more glossy, but it'll stand a little bit higher heat. So if you got something you're going to put in your car, I do license plates, the front, vanity plates for the front of the car. I'll
Oh,
do it out of
nice.
PETG, and they'll live outside in the sun, no problem.
Right.
And then beyond that, you have stuff like you said, TPU, which is like a flexible filament. And then you can get into stuff like ABS, which you're familiar with. It's just like injection molded stuff. ASA is a similar to ABS. Those are a little bit more toxic, a little bit more difficult to print. You have to be a little bit, enclosed space on your printer for the fumes, and also some filaments don't like to have drafts when you're printing because of the way the plastic shrinks as it cools.
Okay.
So you have to have a more controlled environment. Another reason why PLA is where everybody starts is because it's probably the most forgiving as far as basically any machine will run it.
So the majority of things 3D printed is going to be that PLA.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Everything I sent you, Al,
Yeah.
that's PLA.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the cheap, easy to work with the most colors available.
Yeah.
It's super cheap, super accessible everywhere, but just don't put it out in the sunlight. Don't put it anywhere warm
Yeah.
because it just won't stand up to that. But it's good for little toys and fidgets
Right.
and stupid little shit that you put on the shelf, which is
Yeah.
what I print so much of.
It's actually surprisingly strong filament, but where it runs into problems is it it deforms under load over time. So if you build like a hanger or something, like something where it's weight pulling on it, even if it will withstand that weight, load over time causes it deform where other plastics would hold up.
Right.
Like PETG will be more likely is actually not quite as strong technically, but because it has a little bit more flex, it's going to bend, whereas a PLA would more likely to shatter. So you actually can get a stronger print out of the PETG because that little bit of flex allows it to hold more weight without breaking. Whereas PLA is technically stronger, but because it will crack under load instead of flex, uh,
Right.
it won't hold as much, even though it is a stronger filament.
Right. Interesting.
And then you get beyond that, you get really into high end like engineering grade filaments, which you don't see a whole lot. Like, so I'll give you an example, like roll of PLA anywhere from 15 to say $25 a roll. You can get into engineering grade carbon fiber nylons, stuff like that, where you're talking, you know, $80 for a half a kilogram roll. So, you know, 6 to 10 times as much.
Yeah.
But they're also those engineering grade filaments are legitimately engineering grade. Uh, you can print. There's guys that can print components that will go on motors. Like you can print them in for cars, and they will last on the motor. So
Is
in
the
that environment,
finish is the finish different between all these, or is it all structural and use?
um, yeah, no, I mean you're gonna get like you could do a carbon fiber nylon because it has the carbon fibers in it
Yeah.
will typically have a rougher surface, so it's like it will look different printed.
Right.
Um, but most of your engineering grades, it's basically they come out. They're going to be black or gray. They're not going to be. They rarely come in a huge variety of colors. It's basically here's this thing.
Mhm.
We only sell a little bit of it to a couple of companies, so we're not making it in 150 different colors.
Right.
It's this is what you get. This is
Right.
black.
Yeah.
You
It'll
know
do what you need to do. It
exactly
doesn't have to be pretty.
right.
And I thank you so much. I didn't mean to jump off in that. Usually, I should have said, "Hey, introduce yourself. Tell us what your toys are, and explain what you do, real
Oh,
quick."
fair enough. Yeah. Sorry, we skipped over that part.
My
Uh,
apologies.
I'm Jacob Daugherty. My Instagram is other dog design, even though I don't really post on it very much at all. And that was just me and my wife. When we started making stuff, we just decided to come up with a name, and it was the initials are odd, and we thought it was funny. And our dog's named Other Dog, so it's and our logo is our dog. So, but my thing, I was a serial hobby collector for most of my life. I would get into something just long enough to buy all the toys and then never actually do it. So until I found 3D printing, and that's kind of been my niche since then. It's the one thing that's kept my attention, and I really gravitate to. I kind of started in the maker community with a laser cutter and some basic woodworking. Kind of got it, met up with a group of people, met Jeff through that group, um, and was mostly laser cutting for the first little bit. But then once I got my first 3D printer, the laser cutter just started, it basically gathers dust now. It's all about the 3D printer, and I'm up to. I've owned 10 so far, but I have 7 that run. They're actually in operation now. So
And you keep them busy?
Al's muted. He's talking to me, but
I'm sorry. My apologies. So this is your job? This is what you do for a living?
no.
Oh, okay. Okay. My apologies.
No. This is a hobby that basically the only thing my goal is to make enough money off of it that I don't actually put any money into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my hobby is completely self-sustaining at this point.
Yeah.
Um,
Having any success at that?
so what?
Are you having any success at
Yeah,
that?
yeah. No. Actually, it does work. It's I haven't bought anything for 3D printing since my first 3D printer. Everything else is paid for by 3D printing.
Awesome.
So, which means that I can buy whatever I want and don't have to look at my budget because
Yeah.
the 3D printers, it's different money. It doesn't count. It's not real money.
Yeah.
So,
That's
uh,
that's a good way of looking at it. I like it.
yeah. Um, but yeah, so it's and because I'm terrible at making money, but luckily my wife is a little bit more entrepreneurial. So usually I just do this part and I hand her a box once a week and say, get rid of this, give me cash, and that's
Nice.
kind of the way it works. So
Is your wife looking for work? I've got boxes of stuff. Yeah, that marketing's that's a thing. I haven't figured it out.
well, I mean, we're lucky. We right up the street from us is one of the largest flea markets in the southeast,
Okay.
and her mother had been had a booth there for years doing candles and making decent money. So
Nice.
we bought a toy business. So we actually own a toy store at the flea market. It's a physical store. It's not like a table once a week.
Uh-huh.
It's an actual physical store. So we have a toy store. And we were just one of those things. Well, why don't we throw some of my 3D printed stuff in the toy store? And we did, and it actually did pretty well. So now we actually have 2 stores, and one that does toys, and then one that does my 3D prints. And
Wow.
but again, she runs all that. I just hand her the merchandise once a week, and
Yeah.
she brings it back.
This sounds like a full time job.
It I have prevent. I never want to sit down and actually try to figure out what I make per hour doing it because I think it would just depress me.
Right. Right.
Um,
Right.
it's but it keeps me busy. I mean,
Yeah.
if I wasn't doing this, I'd just be sitting staring at TV and I'd make zero off of that. So
There's something to be
true.
said for protecting your peace, and
Yeah,
if this is your peace, then roll with it, man.
yeah. I'm certainly not trying to monetize it to being a job. I have a job that I like,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it's a good job. So
Yeah.
I have no interest in trying to take the thing that I enjoy doing and then putting the pressure of being that thing is now putting food on the table. Like
Yeah.
I have no interest.
Yeah. Then it's not
So,
fun anymore.
yeah,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. Good for you. That sounds like a pretty amazing plan.
I was going to ask, what kind of things do you normally like to print?
So my bread and butter is your typical articulated dragon, flexy fidget like kid toy type stuff. That's the majority of what we do, and what I mean, it's what people want. Do a lot of Pokemon, like little again actually the articulated dragon that everybody sees. I keep a commercial license to that guy's account because it's the thing that sells the most. It's people love them, absolutely love them. And
I got one hanging right there.
yeah, I mean they fund the more interesting. Like I enjoy the big projects like the battle droid that's full size, but it's you know I will sell twice as much dollar amount in $15 dragons as I will a battle droid. You know what I'm saying?
Can I ask what that thing cost?
Uh, Cost to make probably about 250, um, maybe a little bit more. Sell. I usually uh, it's usually a pretty easy calculation. I typically uh, quadruple the cost of my filament, and that's what I charge for stuff.
Yeah,
So
so it's
that
a
usually,
grand.
that usually covers, you know, electricity and time and any incidentals, and helps pay off the machines and stuff like that. It's not a very, there's guys that have super spreadsheets and they figure out everything to the penny and blah blah blah. And this is how much you're supposed to charge for your stuff. And I'm just like, well, I could do that, or I could just weigh it
Right.
and charge by
Right.
make it easy on myself. So
So in the design of the podcast here to learn how to do things, give us a thumbnail of how you start and end up with a 6.5 or 7 foot droid.
well, I mean, and you guys were talking to Chris Rayleigh about this. Is like that I'm the guy that really does just mostly down. Like I do a lot of downloading and just pressing the button. So I mean, for the Battle Droid, it was finding the right set of files. Where I what So I think what goes from just pressing the easy button, like y'all were talking about, to some level of skill is, I think you can, the more that you print and the more that you see, if I do this thing, it causes it to fail. If I do this thing, it makes it look prettier. Or if I do, if I change this setting, it's smoother and I don't have to sand as much or paint or blah, blah, blah. If it looks better coming off the build plate. So there's a level of skill to know how to adjust things to get the best possible quality the easiest.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something I'm really good at.
Mm-hmm.
My quality is pretty consistent and my failure rate's pretty low.
Yeah.
And I think there is some skill to that, but I definitely don't consider myself like any kind of artist or anything, right? And I don't take any credit for any of the stuff I make, because there are truly talented designers out there that are making stuff, and I'm happy to pay them to license to sell it. And eventually I would like to be one of them designing the thing. And then I actually do feel probably a little bit more pride for some stupid little license plate or something if I design the file start to finish,
Mm-hmm.
as I do some huge, the full size battle droid, because I was responsible for the paint on that, but the file itself, the impressive part, the
Right.
3D shape, I had nothing to do with.
Right.
Um,
Right. How long a print is that?
what's that?
How long does it take to print one of them?
Oh, a couple 100 hours, I think, roughly.
Over multiple printers or total?
Yeah. Usually, what I'll do with that, if when I print one of those, I'd have printed 3 of the pit droids and 2 of the battle droids so far. I'll usually just knock off one of my printers, and it just runs on that printer is responsible for it, so the rest of the fleet can do something else.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I get too head down in one project, I'll neglect everything else, and I'll just have a backlog of stuff that
Yeah.
she'll put in orders. Hey, I need these, I need those. Um,
Yeah.
if I don't allot some of my machines to keep those, I'll get behind.
Yeah.
Right. You'll have an empty box to hand in at the end of the week.
Do not want
Yeah.
an empty box. Do not
Yeah.
want an empty box.
That's a good point that you brought up there. Like I can easily get like I call it getting stuck. I'll have 5 things going, and then I'll just start focusing on one thing, and then all of a sudden I haven't done anything
Yeah.
for a few days or a week or whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll usually try to keep at least one printer set aside for whatever project is tickling my fancy. Like right now, I'm in the middle of printing a fully 3D printed model railroad, and it's like the tracks are 3D printed, the truck, like the trains, the cars, the wheels, everything, and you motorize it and you control it with your phone.
wow.
And because the tracks are 3D printed, you don't run the electricity through the track. You have a battery in the engine,
Right.
and then it's running off a little ESP32 board. So you program it, and then you can control it with your phone. It's got Bluetooth and everything.
And you
So,
just USB charge it at night or whatever.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's
Send me an email when you're done with that one. No, really, I'm building a backyard bar, and
yeah.
I want a train
Okay.
running around the top, and I think
Yeah, yeah,
having a maker train would be even better.
yeah, yeah.
And he's also looking for excuses to buy a new printer
Yeah, yeah.
because he
I
doesn't
don't
have one yet.
I don't
And
have a
we keep
3D printer
talking to people
yet.
about how cool they are.
yeah. I mean,
What
honest.
what are your printers back here? I see the two. Are they?
So, well, so I started with a Prusa, and I can't say enough good things about them. It got me into the hobby. I no longer have that Prusa. Now I'm mostly bamboo. I've got an A1 Mini, and then I have an A1 Mini at my shop that runs on the weekends. I have two A1s, two X1 carbons, and then this is the new one. It's a Creality K2 Plus, the big boy there.
Right.
I was waiting on Bamboo to put out an extra large printer, and they keep dragging their feet and not doing it. So I finally gave up on them and went with Creality.
It, is that the one that? And forgive me, I hear. I believe it was Bob Claggett was talking about. It has four
No,
tables.
that's the orange Storm Giga, and that one is literally so big you can just sit in the center of it.
Yeah, he
Like
said it's like a dryer.
yeah, no, it's ridiculous. This one is so that big one right there is like 350 by 350.
Uh,
The Orange Storm is like 800 by 800. So four of those
wow.
together, it's
Yeah.
so big it's pointless. Like that was yeah. I haven't really heard anything good about those.
He said he spent a lot of time and he
Yeah,
still didn't get the tables all coplanar and
yeah. I think it was more of a hey, we did this cool thing versus hey, this is an actually useful
yeah.
thing.
We
So
we put four
Right.
printers into one cabinet.
It's look how big it is, not look what we can do with it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean it's one thing to make it big, but if it's not good, uh,
Yeah.
and probably the one and honestly the reason I think Bamboo has done so well is they figured out their machines are really good at one major thing, and that is a good first layer. And like the most important thing about a 3D print is the first layer, because if as long as your file, like if it's a decent file, if your first layer goes down good, you're going to have success. But I don't care how good your file is, if you don't have a good first layer, your print's going to fail.
It's going to
So
fall off. I mean
yeah,
let's be for the people who don't do this very often. Failure is, in my experience, 90% because the part let go of the plate. Normally, if it just falls off, and then it starts doing whatever the hell it wants and painting spaghetti in the air.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
where sometimes the part will shift over and then get stuck like an eighth of an inch from where it should be. So you just get like a layer shift halfway up your part with a bunch of mess on it.
Yeah, and and so that adhesion to the build plate, that's a good first layer, good model. But honestly, like I can say, even over the last couple of years, the technology of what build plates are made from has changed the game on that. Like when I started printing, it was like Prusa was making a name for itself because it had the PEI plate, and that was good. And then the textured PEI plates came out, and those were even better. And now I don't even mess with those because you have like I think Dark Moon. It's basically these epoxy plates, and they will stick like crazy with no heat or very little heat. So I've actually reduced my energy usage because now I don't have to keep my build plates hot 24 hours a day. Because I used to have six heaters basically running in this room, and the room stayed hot all the time. Now, like the main heat source is gone because I can run a cooler plate, and I mean these things absolutely like it's they some I've had one that was sticking so well that the print tore itself apart trying to get it off the build plate. Like it was so like they've as the hot like as the technology has improved, they have made that adhesion to the build plate so much better that now you can print stuff. It's easier to print stuff. Like it's easier to do super detailed tiny things without expecting something to fail. Like when I first got my Prusa, some of the stuff that I print now without even thinking about it, I used to have a 50% failure rate, but because there was so much model with such a small footprint on the bill plate that half the time it would pop loose. Well, now I hit go and don't even look at them. I just come back when they're done. You know, it's wild what they'll do.
So which plates are you actually using? Are you using the bamboo plate or is it a third party?
Okay, so both. Bamboo has one called the Super Tack Cool Plate that has
Right.
crazy good adhesion and a pretty smooth surface. I use Dark Moon plates, which was one of the first ones to do those epoxy plates. They're really good, a little bit more finicky. And then BQ, BIQU, has the Panda, the Glacier plate. They're the blue ones. Um, those are very similar to the Dark Moons, and they have crazy good adhesion also. So it's a mix. I have as much as I have a filament buying habit, I also have a build plate buying habit. So I average 4 to 5 build plates per machine. Um, so just because every time I see a new one, I have to buy it to try it and see what works. So I
Are they
just have a stack
expensive?
of them.
Are these expensive pieces?
I mean, 30, $40.
Hmm.
But again, Al, it's not real money. 3D printer made it. So it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter. As long
Not
as
real money.
it's not real money.
You sound like my wife again. Al.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got
Yeah.
one of those super tacks in my cart right now, right next to the point 0.2 mil nozzle. Um,
Yep.
I got to push go on both of those one of these nights.
Both worth printing. Now, do you have which printer do you have?
I've got a carbon.
Okay. So I haven't ever messed with changing the nozzle on the carbon because it's not difficult. It's a fairly quick nozzle change, but it isn't easy because you have to pull the wires and they're really finicky, whatever. I'd say like the A1s have made the nozzle changes so easy that I swap like on my mini, it'll go back and forth. Like one print will be a point two, the next print will be a point four, then back to a point two, then back to a point four. I just swap every other print, like because it's literally a 30-second nozzle change, and you do it cold.
Okay.
I mean, just absolutely wonderful. So I love, like, I basically have never had any reason to get a point two on my carbons because my mini, and honestly, the A1 mini is a perfect machine for a point two nozzle because your prints are always gonna be so small with a nozzle that size that you do not need a full size build plate, so that becomes the perfect machine for it.
That makes
Is it?
sense.
Is that a good starter machine? Like I was looking at these X1 carbons, and I just don't have $1,000 to start something.
I,
Is there a good machine out there for the money? I mean, I also believe in if I've got to spend 80% of my time messing with it to save $200, that's not worth it.
okay, so yeah, there are two parts there's two different hobbies with 3D printing.
Mhm.
There's either one hobby is messing with 3D printers. There's another hobby that's printing stuff. And I always wanted to be the printing stuff hobby.
Yeah.
So, and that's why I think like Prusas and Bamboos, they just work. You do not have to tinker constantly.
Hmm.
For the money, I think an A1 is an amazing printer to
Which
get you
costs about what to get it to?
300 bucks.
300. Okay.
I think it's maybe if you want to get the 4 color, it's maybe 450. Um,
Yeah.
it, you
So
know,
so it'll do color changes too.
oh yeah,
Right.
This is just a smaller
no.
scale.
Okay, so the A1 is the same size build volume as the X1 Carbon,
Oh,
but it's a bed slinger, not a Core XY. So basically, with a Core XY, your bed moves up and down in the Z axis, and then the head moves in your X and Y axis.
hmm,
So your the advantage to that is you don't have any movement on your part. So on the traditional type of printer is what's called a bed slinger. Your y axis, your x axis, or your y axis.
Why?
Yeah, your y. Your bed moves forward and backwards. Your head only moves left and right, and then the head moves up and down.
okay.
So where the issue with that is inertia. If you have a tall, thin print,
Hmm.
even if you've got good adhesion, when that bed is moving, the bottom is moving. There's torque on the,
Right.
it's inertia for the top. It's leverage.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so with a Core XY, you don't have that because there's no movement to the part itself,
Mm-hmm.
except for up and down.
Right.
Um, but those are edge case type stuff. If you're wanting to save the money, I mean, middle ground is a P1S. It's pretty
Yeah.
good. It's Core XY, solid machine. Does most of the stuff that an X1 Carbon will do. But
Mm-hmm.
if you really are not sure about 3D printing and you only want to spend a couple $100, an A1 is
Mm-hmm.
awesome. Um, if you're thinking mostly small stuff like fixturing for around the shop, like little stuff, the A1 Mini is a wonderful machine.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely wonderful. Both of them are great.
Yeah.
Now, when you say small, like battery holders and stuff like that,
Yeah,
an
A1
A1.
Mini will do that all day.
Okay.
So basically, I think it's something like 180 cubed. So
Like, damn.
180 millimeters.
Go pull out that metric tape
Yeah.
measure you got over
I
there,
gotta
Al.
find it.
I know you got one.
So so you have a CNC. You don't know, like you don't do everything in metric.
No.
No,
What?
No.
he's got a CO2 laser and a fiber laser, and he still thinks and works in
Yeah, I had
standard
to.
units.
Wait. Is it 180? That would be 18, right? So
Yeah,
about 7 1/8.
Yeah, that's for an A1 Mini, and then
Okay.
your X1s, your A1s, and your P1 are all 256 cubed,
Okay.
uh, and then the big boy there is like 350. So
Oh, so cubed. Okay, so seven
yeah,
by 7 by 7. All right.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
That's the mini. The
Yeah.
mini does like 7 by 7 by 7. The normal A1, the P1 line, and the X1 line are all 256, which is about, I think, 10 inches.
yeah, roughly.
So and that's cubed. So it's 10 left and right, 10 front to back, and 10 top to bottom is your build capacity. But if you never need to print anything bigger than 7 inches, you can save money and get a mini.
Yeah. I'm looking at. Oh, it's an open. Okay. A1 Mini, colorful gateway to 3D printing. $199.
Yeah, and you're gonna spend a little bit more for that. For if you want the multicolor, you're gonna
That
spend more.
spool thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and I mean, and it doesn't just do multicolor. One advantage to that is the auto swap, which means like so if your spool runs out, you can have a second, like you can have the backup spool and it'll continue to print, so your print doesn't stop.
So
So
you,
they've solved a lot of
yeah, you can put
problems.
three rolls of gray on there and just
Right.
let it go. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see here. Bamboo
Yeah.
Lab A1 Mini
I had
3D
a
printer.
friend that found the auto switching on accident this morning when his black ran out, and it just grabbed the next color blue and continued his print. He
Well, it only did that because he probably. I'm gonna guess, and I don't know. I could be wrong. I'm gonna guess that he didn't have his filament mapped right in the software because if it thinks it's different colors, it won't auto. It won't. It'll only auto switch if it thinks it's the same thing one to the other. It's not supposed to do
okay.
that where so. But if you don't take the time to change the colors when you load stuff, and half the time I don't. Like I'll load something in the AMS, I'll look over slot 3. Okay, slot 3 is what it is. But if you
Doesn't matter if the machine knows whether it's blue, as long as you know
right,
the blue part needs to run on spool 3. It really
correct,
doesn't
right.
matter.
As
And
a matter of fact, I started doing. There's some stuff that I'll do all before I could do 8 colors, and there was some prints where I needed more than 4 colors. I would have it where, like, let's say, uh, color 1 through 4 was to a certain point. Well, when I got done with color 1, I would pause. I'd have the print pause. I could pull that one out and pop color 5 in the same slot, but not tell the machine that that was color 5. You know what I'm saying? So it would continue on thinking it was the
Mm-hmm.
that original color, but I was actually getting the fifth, sixth, seventh. So I could get 8 colors out of a 4 color machine
Mm-hmm.
with a little bit of creative slicing.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that trick for is supposed to work with the Hue Forge because you never need to go back to the first color again. Because I mean,
Mm,
with HueForge, I mean, I've seen it. I've seen HueForge go back to an original color like once or
yeah,
twice, but most of the time it'll print color one and then go to
yeah,
color two and then color three and then color four. And
right.
I understand that if you've only got one AMS with four slots, once it's done with color one, you can pull that out and put in color five. And once it gets to the end of four, it'll start back on one and reach for that for the next color. I haven't tried it yet. It's on my to-do list.
What's that? UForge?
Oh no, well I've
Or
done Hue
all
Forges.
of the fifth?
Just a Hue Forge that's got more than four colors.
Yeah, yeah.
I
I
want
think
to try a Hue Forge that's got five or six or seven colors
yeah,
and do it with the one AMS and just switch them halfway
yeah,
through.
yeah. I've done. I think seven. I think 7 or 8's the most I've done. Uh, which that's another thing I'm loving about this. The big machine that I just got is now I can do bigger hue for. I can do 300 by 300 by 300, and then I usually do. I won't max out the machine because I also designed a frame that goes with all my hue forges. So I need an extra little bit of space for that because I want that to fit on the machine too. So I usually do them a little bit smaller than my build size. So I have room to put the frame around it. Um, it's a separate print, but I want to have the the frame prints is one piece, so I need to have the actual little bit of space so it'll fit on the build plate. Uh, yeah,
So, so, so how do these AMS, like, I understand, well, I don't understand at all, but I see that they're like four colors.
right.
But I've been told by the podcast that you can do eight or however many. How
16, the
16?
limit.
Yeah,
So is there a manifold with 16
yeah,
inputs? Is
right.
that how that
Yeah,
works?
okay. So the A1s, like in the A1 Mini, you're limited to four because
Right.
they don't have a way to. You can't stack the AMSs. The AMS Lite is what comes with that one. But
Yeah,
for the
that's
X,
$369 by the way
yeah,
for the with the AMS and everything.
yeah. So the X1 P1 line uses the original the original AMS,
Okay.
uh, automatic material system, I think is what it stands for. And
Okay.
those you can get, those will daisy chain together, and you can do up to 16. And basically, it's a PTFE tube and a data cable that runs out of the back. You daisy chain them together. And initially, when they started doing it, there was a hub that you would buy. Um, but I honestly, I don't think you need the hub. I think you can get a 4 line splitter, and
Uh-huh.
it'll because it only runs one through at a time. So that's the advantage. Like, so the AMS, what it does, it'll roll the filament all the way through your Bowden tube, all the way into the machine, print, and then when it's done, it rolls it all the way back out and then the next one rolls all the way back in. And it's just the nature of the design.
Okay.
AMS Lite, you actually have 4 separate PTFE tubes that go all the way to your extruder head. So when it color swaps, it only has to back the filament up about 2 inches.
Uh-huh.
So it actually will do color changes faster
Uh-huh.
than so they figured some stuff out with the A1s that it will, so it's technically a more advanced printer
Hmm.
than the older X1 and P1s. Um,
Kind
so
of like that pen when we were kids that had the four colors in it.
yeah,
You just click,
it's
click,
It
click.
works
exactly
exactly like that.
exactly like that. Yeah. I mean, literally exactly like that because
Yeah.
it's a manifold, and basically all
Uh-huh.
it is 4 in the top, 1 in the bottom, and it's a cone shape. And so when
Yeah.
it goes in, it just auto directs it to the hole in the bottom. It's super
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just every time it switches, it pulls it all the way back so it's past that junction point.
Yeah,
Basically, it takes it. I think it hangs on to what like the first 4 to 6 inches in the AMS. Otherwise, it winds everything back onto the spool.
yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
the original AMS lines
Right,
everything back into the unit itself. So it's
right.
it puts out another advantage of that too is you have to have more filament on your roll for it to work in AMS because when you get down to those last couple of feet, I've had like if the print I've gotten it down right at the end, and if it had been printing on a with the AMS Lite, it would have worked. But the regular one, because it needed that all that filament to go through the tube, it
To,
failed. Like I ran out of filament. You know what
to
I'm saying?
drive it.
Print
Yeah.
failed. So
Yeah. Yeah.
one of those weird edge cases that you don't really run into. It's not a big
You're out of filament at the roll, not at the nozzle.
exactly.
Right. And there's 18, 24 inches between those 2 points.
Exactly.
If with the full AMS with the big ones.
Yeah. And
Is there? I notice yours are up on a shelf. Is there a distance that you have to be within with those things, or
um
it's just a matter of how much filament you want to use?
yeah, it's those are probably a little bit further away than they probably should be. You run into a couple of problems. Friction in the tube will
Okay.
means that like I'm probably working my motors a little bit harder than I necessarily should. I just
Mhm.
try to keep the lines as straight as possible so there's not any sharp bends, and that helps reduce it.
Yeah.
Um, but also, it's going to run for a certain like when it sends the filament in, the machine expects to get it at the other end within a certain amount of time. So if your run is too long, it won't have time to get there. But you
Mhm.
have a fairly decent
Yeah.
amount. You've got like you know they've got it enough to where you could stack them up like four of the machines up and have room for it to get to
Yeah.
the print
Yeah.
head. So it's it's not you've got some margin for error there. Is what
Yeah.
I'm getting at.
Right.
This is really bizarre technology. Just sitting here talking about this, like,
Yeah,
as a Gen X kid, I'm just like,
yeah. Oh,
this,
it's. I mean,
Oh
this,
yeah.
it's
this is some
amazing. Like,
Jetsons shit here.
yeah, I'm like you guys said that you wanted like the technical part
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So like and I because this has been my kind of day to day obsession for years. I can talk about it at length.
Geek
No,
out, man. Go.
like, yeah, so yeah, but it really is a. I think it's a fundamental change in the idea of small scale manufacturing. I
Yeah.
think we're going to see in the next, in the next handful of years, it's fundamentally going to change how, manufacturing and prototyping works. There are plenty of like the idea that like all the people that we know on Instagram who have legitimate livelihoods manufacturing something in their garages
Yeah.
like that. Hell, I do it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's you couldn't have that. And not only that, like I make little toys, but I make 100 different things.
Yeah.
Even 15 years ago, for a company to make as many different products as I do,
Yeah.
it'd have to be a multi-million-dollar company with huge injection molding machines. Like it would be a factory, a full-on factory,
Yeah.
but it's all of it's housed in my hard drive, and it
Yeah.
prints on demand.
I don't think Mattel has made 100 board games yet.
Yeah.
Oh, they keep recycling the same damn ones though.
So I mean, and that's just back when Jimmy DeResta always talks about being in the toy business.
Yep, there's
You know,
our Durester reference.
I tossed it in because I figured every maker podcast has to have one. I figured I
Yeah.
would throw it in.
We have not had a single episode without a Durester reference yet, so I just had
Yeah,
to call it out. Keep going.
but it actually is relevant this time. It wasn't just a to toss it out to toss it out.
He's always relevant.
Right. Talk about being in the toy business, and you would design a thing, and it was such a hurdle to get it to the prototyping stage, because that like the investment to make the injection molds and get even like the amount of money you had to put in to just get the first prototype to see if it was any good.
Yeah.
So I mean that's why only like major corporations make stuff. Now you spend $300, you can
Yeah.
prototype all day long, and so you can iterate. You can
Mhm.
constantly change and update. You don't have to get it right the first go round.
Yeah.
If I'm coming up with a design, it's I can have 50 different versions, and all it costs me is a few cents in plastic, and that's a fundamental shift in how everything is done. Um,
Yeah.
and as they figure out the technology and the computers and the slicing gets better and the computers get smarter and the algorithms get uh, more consistent, we are edging towards the 3D printer as an appliance, which means non-technical person can go buy one, put it on their shelf, and run it from their phone.
Yeah.
And they don't have to know how it works. Just like
No.
most people don't know how a refrigerator works, but they put their food in it.
Right.
They're gonna not know how a 3D printer works, but they can print a product.
We're getting close to the Star Trek replicator stage
Yeah,
where you
yeah, yeah.
just tell the computer you want this product and it just creates it for you.
Basically, like when I was, when we like, and these are to the point. I have found a model, decided on it, sliced it, and sent it to a printer from my phone. I didn't have to download anything. I didn't have to. I didn't have to have a slicing software. I did it entirely from my phone within the app, from start to finish. Like that. That technology now exists.
So do you see like a to your point, like a tabletop little enclosed thing that you ordered on Amazon? You unbox it, you put it on the kitchen counter and plug it in, and connect it to your Wi-Fi, and it connects to a library, and then you just say, Alexa, print me a 6-inch fidget dragon.
Oh, yeah, it we'll get it eventually.
She's
Like
gonna try.
yeah, I mean we're not quite there. I mean we're not there yet.
Right.
There's still a level of, I mean, because I mean it is squirting out molten plastic. There is, stuff
Yeah.
sometimes goes wrong.
Uh-huh.
It's in any, we're just getting beyond the hobby. Up until the bamboos, like every 3D printer was just a slightly more sophisticated version of the ones that guys were building in their garage out of like spare parts. I mean, printing weed eater string,
Yeah.
that's where it started.
Really?
And yeah, that's why. But if you look, almost all filament, it's right about the same size as weed eater string. It's because
Uh-huh.
it was a readily available thermoplastic that you could get anywhere. It was relatively consistent in size. It was just
Uh-huh.
what's available, so that's what they started with.
Oh, no wonder, as a landscape owner, no wonder weed eater string was so expensive. You guys are printing it all.
So
What kind of plastic is weed eater string? Is that
usually nylon,
Yeah.
nylon?
nylon, and oddly enough, whereas most of the plastics that we use on 3D printers now get more brittle if they're hygroscopic, so they suck in moisture, so they get more brittle if they get wet. Nylon's the opposite; it actually
Yeah.
gets stronger. So
We actually soak our rolls of
yes,
trimmer line in a
they
bucket
don't
of
break.
water.
Yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, I think we're not there yet, but yeah, definitely like it's
We're getting closer
for sure, for
to the
sure.
So
point
this,
where you can open the app on your phone. You can say Ryobi battery holder and pull up 16 options. You can pick one that looks like it's going to fit in a workshop where you want and it holds the right number of batteries. And then you can push three more buttons. And back at home in the shop, the machine fires up, starts whirring, and you by the time you get home, it's sitting there waiting for you.
yeah,
I
So
mean,
we're not too far. I mean, it's not programmed into Alexa, and I don't know that it ever will be because I think
yeah,
that's losing money for Amazon, although
yeah,
they can afford it.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, they find a way to monetize everything. I mean, they'll figure that part out. Like I
oh,
think,
you'll be buying from their Prime library, model
well,
library.
actually, and honestly, that actually is the that's pretty relevant
Yeah,
because one of the things, you've got multiple repositories online now. The original was Thingiverse, but that one's kind of obsolete at this point. But you've got MakerWorld, Printables, Things, Pulse 3D. There's millions of models, but there's very little oversight as to what's actually a decent model.
mm-hmm.
Is you can print a DeWalt battery holder, but maybe the guy that designed it was kind of a dumbass, and it's not a very good DeWalt battery holder. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think where the monetization and like the Amazon and that type of stuff is going to come with curated products.
Yeah,
When you pick the thing and say to print it, you're also, the reason you're paying for it is because you're paying for the assurance that this is a well designed model that is printable and will fit and will do the thing that you're asking it to do.
mm,
So I mean that level of curation is a thing that's probably where they can not only paying the creators of the models, but also they're monetizing that curation.
Yeah.
Uh, so I feel like that's where. So you'll have, Amazon will have a smaller library than Fangs or Printables or Maker World, but
Mhm.
that curated library is curated. Every model there, is a good one.
Right. Speaking of models, Jeff, you'll get a giggle out of this. They most of the guests give Al a bunch of crap because he doesn't have a 3D printer yet.
Hmm.
So Joey Steelblade, friend of ours, he has Festool battery holder, 3D printed battery holders. So I asked him how much they were, and he told me, and I said, "All right, cool." He goes, "I don't have any in the store." I was like, "All right, cool. Let me know." So tonight he emailed me the file for the battery holder and said, "Now you got a reason to buy a 3D printer." I was like, "Man."
I mean,
You're
like
already saving money by not paying for somebody else to make those.
they're surprisingly, you will find uses for it. Like, I mean, my stuff is mostly, toys or whatever, but like they are a legitimate help in the shop. I don't know if you guys have saw like Chris from Full Steam Designs has made a pretty legitimate uh, pocket hole jig from the
Yeah.
3D printer that, I mean, appears to work as well or better than it's one that uses it with his router and a drill bit, and
Huh.
it seems to work as well or better than the Craig jig because it gets a lower angle to the screws,
Mhm.
so it's less likely to pull. It seems like it's a little bit stronger
Yeah.
of a connection. Uh, 3D printed part,
So he literally iterated another product.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't take very long on Instagram going through and seeing all the various
Mhm.
hobbies, including 3D printing in their hobby. It is just it can be a tool in of itself. It is my hobby,
Mhm.
and so this is the end for me. But for for woodworkers, there's a place to make
Mhm.
things. I mean fixturing jigs and stuff like that. You can
Yeah.
print
Right.
one-off specific like jigs to help you with glue ups,
Hold
for the
down.
complicated shapes.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
if you're doing segmented bowls, no problem to print the jigs to help you cut out the parts for segmented bowls, and you can get all your angles perfectly precise, so all your segmented bowls go together better. You know,
Oh
there's
man.
there's
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, any hobby you can think of, there is a place. My wife will do embroidery. All of her embroidery floss is now in a case that I designed with little holders that fit in it that I designed, and those holders chuck into a drill, and she can wind her floss on it with a drill instead of having to do it by hand.
Yeah. Yeah.
All 3D printed. So I
Yeah.
mean, embroidery or
Yeah.
has a place like 3D printed. So every hobby, because
Yeah.
you're just making one-off specific uh, tools that no company would manufacture it because there's not enough use case for it, or if they do manufacture it, it would be prohibitively expensive because only 5 people will ever buy one.
Right.
But you can just make it.
Yeah.
So it's
My sister does that diamond. It's
mhm,
like
Yep.
uh, whatever.
yep.
Yep. My
Uh,
wife does it.
yeah, and actually, Vincent printed a thing that she can scrape her little pellets into, and it funnels them back into the container. It's
Okay.
like
Yeah.
it's like a Lego sorter for little tiny diamond pieces.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. It is it can either be the hobby or it can just be a tool
Mhm.
in the
Yeah.
toolbox.
Right.
How are they? Like I see, like the A1 Mini is no case at all. How like will they survive in a wood shop with wood dust and stuff, or should they be inside in a closet somewhere?
Inside. I
Yeah.
wouldn't I
Yeah.
wouldn't put one in a like a wood shop, like
Yeah.
especially like a wood shop, like if you have a clean side to your shop. But yeah, I wouldn't. I like
Here.
yeah,
That's off my laser.
yeah, I would.
Just
I,
Yeah.
and the main reason I wouldn't recommend it is because anything on your build plate that prevents a good connection between the plate and the plastic
Mhm.
is a problem. Like your greasy, dirty fingers are
Mhm.
enough to like they'll put down
Really?
enough of a layer of oil that will, when it's hot, it prevents that bond between the plastic and the build plate. So
Okay.
yeah,
Note
you want.
note to self: do not spray WD-40 on a build plate.
There you go. That's the main
Now,
thing.
Now, I mean, I've got my X1 carbon. It's in my wood shop.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I do cut wood in here.
Mm-hmm.
However, the X1 does come with the full enclosure, so
Mm-hmm.
you can just shut the front door.
Yeah.
However, that is also inside of a cabinet.
Right.
Yeah.
I designed a cabinet for my first 3D printer, which was a resin printer that I've since I got rid of it after I got the bamboo. But you can't get sawdust in your resin because that's just going to be a shit show right there pretty quick. So I made a cabinet that's got doors on the front that swing shut and close and keeps it a small enclosure that is dust free. Now, most of the time when I'm printing, I'll leave those doors like open a few inches in the front so it doesn't get too hot in there because I'm using the plate that needs the heat on the heat bed so it gets toasty in there and I don't want things to get too hot. So I'll leave those doors open if I'm not making sawdust. That way they get a little bit cooler basement air to circulate in there. But I mean, if I'm going to fire up the table saw or the CNC or even the band saw, which is right next to it, I will shut those doors down. I'll shut the carbon's front door all the way and I'll shut the cabinet doors in front of it. So that's not dust proof 100%. It's not clean room, but it
Right.
it, it, it screens out 95 8% of it or something
Yeah.
like that.
And a little bit of common sense goes a long way. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
computer component, and you're dealing with either screws or linear rails. So you're talking about bearings, and the whole point is you're wanting stuff to move smoothly on a track. I mean, just like the CNC, if you don't like, I guarantee there's a lot of people that have problems with their CNCs. That some of the problem is they're not keeping them clean, so that the axes can't move smoothly and causes problems. You're muted again now.
Got to clean out your ball screws occasionally.
I literally just replaced linear rails guides because they just got eaten up, just
Mm-hmm.
destroyed them,
Yeah,
and not a fun job. So take care of your equipment.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, and it's a little bit goes a long way. I usually print cool and I print slow.
Mhm.
So my machines, I some people didn't believe me. I have over 10,000 hours on my first X1, and I've done almost no maintenance to it.
Wow.
Like, definitely have not done all of the recommended maintenance, and certainly haven't done it at the recommended intervals.
Yeah.
Um, but I also, like, it makes a difference that I print a little bit cooler than normal and I print a little bit slower than normal. So I'm not stressing out the parts as much as a lot of people do. Um,
Yeah.
so it's my everything has lasted longer for me. I've been lucky. So
I'm really envious of like your laboratory level setup. Like it's just beautiful and clean, and like a lot of the serious 3D print guys and gals you see, like they have these print labs that are just like
yeah, it was. This is a new development.
mm,
The room got because I had some work tables and then every surface had a printer on it, and it became where I had a room full of tables and no flat surfaces to work on. And I had just rolls of filament stacked up on the floor because I didn't have enough space for them. So
mm,
I've recently redone the whole space for that reason. But yeah, it's been a lot of, like, it makes a difference. Mental health. You walk into a space, everything has a
sure,
place. It's
sure.
if it's more conducive to work, but
Mhm.
you also don't see what's over here, which is all of my half finished projects that need to be either glued together or painted or rub and buff or
Mhm.
assembled. So
Yeah.
it's not all lab clean.
So are you Wi-Fi to these printers or
Yeah.
Bluetooth or
Oh yeah.
something?
Wi-Fi.
So you literally just pull down a menu and select what printer you
Yeah.
want to send a job to.
Yeah.
So you don't have to have 10 computers in there. And
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Um,
nice, nice.
yeah. The first one, like when I first got it, you'd had to physically carry an SD card over, and some people still do that because they don't want their stuff going to the cloud. Like, I
Hmm.
don't care. particularly that China sees my articulated dragons because
Yeah, yeah.
whatever. But
I
like I
bought.
can understand some people, if you're designing or printing something and you have a proprietary design or you have something that you want to protect you may not want that going into the cloud and,
Yeah,
and sending it somewhere else. So I mean, it's you can do both, but for me, it's
yeah.
uh, convenience.
Bamboo is a Chinese company, and we are sending things up to the cloud through their server and back down to our printer. I mean,
Of
I'm
all
not saying that's sketchy. I'm just saying that I mean, if I was a company and I was printing some fancy proprietary design that we'd spent many thousands of dollars developing, maybe I would put it on an SD card and walk it across this room myself.
like that's they have very recently started implementing some policies. Bamboo is what I'm talking about. uh, have implemented some policies that have not gone over well with the 3D printing community. Like the community itself has kind of an ethos of like openness and feeling like the because it came from open source, it was like 3D printing technology didn't come from a company, it came from hobbyists, and
Right.
then now companies have monetized it. And so there's the ethos has always been open source, transparency, and Bamboo has kind of started the enshittification of that. They've started to close some stuff down, and there's been a lot of pushback. Um, but as of right now, them like sending stuff through the cloud and having that stuff like to me, that's I've got bigger stuff to worry about. Like
Hmm.
is it a concern? I can understand where you would be concerned, but I've got other stuff that I'm way more concerned about.
Hmm.
So
Right. I mean, especially when it's a flexi dragon that you paid some other guy that designed it so you can use it and sell it, and
yeah.
then
Or
It,
if I
it's it
downloaded the model from their website, why do I
it's already.
care that I'm uploading it to the web? Like,
I was gonna
right,
say it's
right.
already there.
yeah,
It's already in their library. They already
Yeah.
know what you're printing and they know what you've done.
yeah, fair enough.
Nice.
And
So I'm sorry. Go ahead,
well,
please,
I was
Jeff.
just gonna say, there's a lot of talk about selling things that you've downloaded and paid for the rights for, and there's a lot of talk about how you can use these things to prototype and make new models without having to play with China and injection molding. And but the thing I think tends to get glossed over is how many people are printing actual products, and they're doing their full manufacturing on these printers.
Hmm.
I mean, when you look at it, like Joey is printing these 3D printed battery holders for Festool.
Hmm.
He's printing them, he's selling them straight to consumers, and he's kicking them off his printer and he's selling them straight to people. He designed a product, he marketed the product, and he's selling it straight to people right off his printer. And uh, seeing as everybody's clearly been listening to Making It recently, Bob has been selling um, some 3D printed camera mount that
Oh, for the
mounts off
monitor.
of
Yeah. Yeah.
it mounts off. I think it's the pole that goes in your. I don't know.
No.
He's got some sort of a pole. I don't remember what the hell he's got going on, but he's got some camera mount that he designed that he put a lot of work into. And he's been talking the last couple episodes about the fact that he put this on his website as an actual physical product, and he's been selling them. He'll
Hmm.
push the button when he goes to bed. He'll get up in the morning. He'll pull 5 products off of the bed,
Hmm.
and he'll go over to the computer, print some labels, put them in boxes, and he's mailing these
Yeah.
things to people. And
Absolutely.
this isn't
Yeah.
this isn't just about the 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 prototypes. Everybody focuses on prototypes, and prototypes are great. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's a great way to prototype an idea for really cheap. But once you've finalized your design, this is an actual practical, affordable manufacturing
Right.
system that
Yeah.
you can sell. You can just create an entire product line,
Oh,
hit print
absolutely.
on these things, and sell them to people.
If you, I mean, it doesn't. If you understand how the printing process works, and you're paying attention to the strengths and weaknesses of uh, that technology, like the 3D print, like a 3D printed object has certain advantages and certain weaknesses compared to injection molding. There's things that you can do with 3D printing that you can't do with injection molding. There's things that injection molding will do that 3D printing doesn't do. As long as you're taking that into consideration and designing around that, there's no real reason why a 3D printed product can't be just as good as a quote unquote like traditionally manufactured product. So that's what exactly what I'm talking about. It's changing the idea of small scale boutique manufacturing. I think is going to, they always talk about bring manufacturing back to America. Well, I mean
We're doing it.
that doesn't necessarily have to be a massive mill or a huge factory, because you can, one factory might employ 100 people from this one town, but if we can teach people to create things themselves, like you can have 10 times that many people having legitimate jobs manufacturing things in their own homes as their own business owners. Like you can bring manufacturing back to America, and it doesn't have to be a corporation making the money. Like
Yeah,
it can
our
be the little guy.
our our great grandparents, traded milk and candles and blacksmithing and stuff like that. We're going to be trading and selling 3D printed objects, CNC created objects, laser cut objects. Making products for people, and yeah.
And you can competitively make products, because
hmm hmm
everything that I do, there is no middleman. There's the I'm direct,
yeah.
and like so I can charge a legitimate amount for my time, my materials,
hmm
my intellectual property,
hmm
charge a fair amount, and I can still do it for a reasonable price because I don't have a whole corporation. Now there's disadvantages, like having a whole corporation. There's stuff that comes along with that,
hmm
but there's also the overhead of having that that has to be factored in. So like you can do volume or you can be lean, and
yeah.
both have their advantages.
hmm
You know,
hmm
so it is absolutely a viable choice for not only for people, but I think as a country, it is a viable step for us to take that I think we need to put more focus into. But like that is how you bring manufacturing back to this country, or one of the ways.
I believe that'll preach.
Sounds good to me. So I've got a question, and it has a lot to do with looking at these racks full of filament over your shoulder here.
Yeah.
Um, these are all well open to the air in your room, and I'm curious if you've got any systems or solutions for the moisture problem. Do you run dehumidifiers or do you have dryers? Do you use that?
So the trick is live somewhere that's not terribly humid and have an air conditioned house, because that's
Okay.
all I do. I
So
mean,
you got one of the two.
like legitimately, like I have rolls of filament that I have my first roll of filament that I ever got is still on the rack right there. It came with my very first printer, and I've
Wow.
just never used it all because it's not that good. I just don't want to throw it away because like I'm nostalgic like that.
I was gonna say now it has meaning.
But yeah, but it would if I threw it in this printer over here, it would still print. I've had a handful of rolls get brittle and snap and break and explode, but literally over the thousands of rolls I've bought, um, I think it's happened to me twice. Um,
Okay.
I've probably lost a little bit of print quality on a few of the rolls that have been out for a while. Some are worse than others, but I would say by and large for PLA in an air conditioned house, and I don't live in Louisiana. I've been. I really I think that a lot of times people are every time you go to Reddit and there's something wrong with a print, oh, dry your print. It's because your filament's wet. That's sometimes it's the problem, but it's not always the problem. And I think people try to make it like that is every time. I don't think it's, and again, it's certain filaments are worse. Certain filaments are more hygroscopic than others, so they're going to attract more moisture. TPU, I'll dry it before I print it every time. PETG, if it starts getting stringy, we'll dry it. Will make a difference. With my PLA,
When you say dry it, what's dry it? I
okay,
don't know what that
so
means.
it's basically you're putting it in a heated chamber and it helps dry the moisture out of it. Because
Like there's a machine you buy to dry
yeah,
filament.
I mean
Oh, okay.
you can buy a machine. You can buy a food dehydrator. You can go to the Goodwill and get a food dehydrator. That'll
Okay.
work just as well. You just blowing warm air over it. Really is all you're doing. Um, I mean, technically, if you're careful, you could do it in your oven, but I wouldn't recommend it because of plastic fumes. Probably not great.
Yeah.
If you have an enclosed printer, most of them have an option, or you can get code to where it'll just heat the chamber up, and you can just so basically you just put them in a warm environment to drive some of the moisture out, the relative
Does that
humidity.
take hours or?
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
usually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
Ridiculous.
Okay.
yeah,
I was just looking at this last week about whether I should get a dryer, and I saw somebody say, "Oh, well, you can just dry a spool in the X1 because it's got the full enclosure on there. You can stick it in there, and apparently there's a setting for it somewhere that you can go into the tools and tell it to dry your filament. You put a roll in there and lay it down on the bed, and then I think you got to come back after 6 hours and flip it over and then cook the other side for another 6 hours. But I mean, that gets you one roll dry and it's
yeah.
12 hours.
Well, I think that's more for for people that maybe have a tool and they only use it occasionally. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
I print once a week, and I know I'm going to need to print this at the end of the week. I can go ahead and dry my roll. But for somebody like me who's running 6 machines 24/7, I wouldn't tie one of my machines up to dry. I'm going to go spend
Yeah.
the $40 and buy a
Yeah.
purpose made thing.
This seems to be listening to hardcore printers. Like this seems to be a very don't get in a hurry.
Yeah, it's not a fast.
Yeah.
There's yeah,
Yeah.
it's a time like but it is like the machines have gotten to the point where you know you're probably at the point where you can have your CNC running uh, uh like on um, what's the word I'm looking for? You don't have to babysit it all the time.
Oh, I've got a camera. I leave all the time.
Okay, but like for a lot of people,
So
like
edit that out.
yeah, but I mean, for most people, they'd want to stay with it, But
Yeah.
with 3D
Yeah.
printing, like I've earlier, like back in the day, like I think a lot of people are concerned about fire and stuff like that, and it is a machine
Yeah.
heating, like it's a heater running, like in an enclosed space. There is a danger, but like I've mine is a tool that works for me when I'm not around.
Right.
So yeah, they run uh, pretty much all the time.
Yeah.
I
So
find them much more likely to self destruct than they are to be outwardly destructive.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
more likely to blow themselves up and just
Right.
short and stop working than they are to like
yeah.
catch your room on fire. I
But
mean, I
yeah,
won't say it's not possible, but I'd say it's extremely
it's
unlikely.
yeah. And to your point out, but that's why you see basically everybody that really gets into 3D printing, even if they think they're only going to need one, always end up. I thought one was all over. You end up with like six, is because it isn't a instant gratification
Right.
type thing.
Right. Right.
It is, you know, every one of these prints that were going behind me was probably a full day.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's especially if you start doing the multicolor stuff, it's slow, very
So
slow.
so that blue, it looks blue on the screen next to the yellow one there. Or
Yeah,
I guess it'd be the third one over.
yeah.
That thing looks like it's flying.
Oh wait, which one? No, that one's not. No, those aren't running.
The
No,
I'm
the other
sorry.
one. Yeah,
Over
that side.
that one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, they're fast. I mean, they like compared
Wow.
to how they used to be in back in the day, and that's
Wow.
actually
Yeah.
mine. Actually runs slower than most people that you see off of that machine. I find that like uh, for
That
me,
thing's cooking.
for me, print quality is more important than speed.
Yeah. Chris
Uh,
the same way.
and I
Yeah.
found
Yep.
that if I slow it down, I don't have to make it crawl. It's still
Yeah.
way faster than the last generation of printer. But
Yeah.
if I slow it down just a little, I found that a lot of my defects disappear. So it's worth it to me.
I thought they were just like cruising.
No, 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 not anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to ask. Like it really not bums, well, pissed me off. Straight up pissed me off. Like when you first get into CNCs, like all anybody wants to talk about is how fast you're running it, and it's like I don't need to run it. Like I run my average speed is 100 inches a minute
Hmm.
for cutting. And people are like, "Well, you can go 600." I'm like, I don't need to. Why do I need to? Why would I stress the machine? You
Yeah.
know, and break bits and
Yeah.
Right.
I don't, and I would rather have a better cut quality. I don't have to sand for 2 hours after you're
Yeah.
done in 20 minutes. You know,
Exactly.
But I mean, if you're making, say, drawer fronts and you've got a contract to make 1,000 of them,
yeah. Now you need to run fast.
that's when you try to push things, and that's
Hmm.
why people are so driven to see, well, how many parts can I get done today if I crank this thing all the way up?
Yeah,
And that's the reason why people didn't succeed with belt driven CNCs,
yeah.
because you can't do that shit. I
They were
mean,
just getting so much
if you've
slop
got
in
a
them.
Shapeoko and an older one with belts and a trim router on it, you can't just barrel around in circles at 900 miles an hour, because it's gonna break shit. It's gonna stretch the belt. It's gonna jump
Hmm.
notches on the belt, and the router can't keep up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
It was invariably it's a more sound investment for me to have a second machine and both of those machines
hmm,
running slower
yep,
than having one machine and balls to the wall as fast as I can get it to go. Because like I'm going to get a like that investment of the second one is going to
yeah,
give me a better print quality, less post processing. I can get so it may take two machines to get the same amount of output, but that
right.
output is going to be better.
Yeah,
And I
and if
think
you're not,
that's it's
yeah,
if
there's
just
and there's you've got to find that breaking point. Like
yeah,
where do you start? Like go as fast as you need to until
hmm,
you start
hmm,
seeing the negative side of it, and you
yep,
don't need to go any faster than that.
yeah.
yeah,
To put this in CNC sawdust terms that'll make perfect sense to you, if if you cut out a part in 15 minutes and then you have to go sit down on the workbench with your Festool sander for another 10 or 15 minutes, you've got 30 minutes worth of
yeah,
work into this part.
yeah,
But if you slow it down and you tweak your tool paths to be just right, you can pull a part off of there in 20 minutes
yeah.
or 25 minutes, that
You've
you
saved
don't
5 or 10
have to
minutes.
sand
Yeah,
the damn thing when you're done, because
hmm,
it's beautiful.
You've
hmm,
saved even more than that though, because you got to
yeah,
think about like if the machine does all of the work,
yeah,
then you were free. Your time was available to you for something else.
yeah,
Where
yeah,
like if even if it takes the same amount of time, but if you're physically having to do something for half of that time, it
yeah,
is not the same amount of time.
yeah,
It is
yeah,
Right.
you because you could
yeah,
get something else like your time.
hmm, hmm,
You know
hmm. And it's exponential.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
100%. And to your point, add another printer. If you're not using real money, why not add another printer? You're just using printer money.
Right.
I tell you, my wife has definitely been more. She's stronger. Like that mindset is more natural to her than me. Like investment into the business, like investment into things that make money. Like
That's a
she,
that's a good thing. You got a good wife.
yeah,
You should.
like when I first decided this. So it all started like the whole making thing. We wanted crown molding in the house, and
Mhm.
the only thing like there's a part of me I cannot stand to pay somebody else to do a thing that I could do myself. And I mistakenly think I can do almost everything myself. So I always say that's the only thing I hate worse than mowing the yard is paying somebody to mow the yard.
Yeah.
So I was going to put up crown molding, which led me into a rabbit hole of how do you put up crown molding, which turned into woodworking, which turned into, and then I just came to her apropos of nothing. I was not a maker. I didn't have we didn't even have a craft room, nothing. I said, I think I should buy a laser. I think we could make. I think I could make products off of. I think we could make money, and no hesitation. And it was way more than we could afford when we got it. No hesitation. I'll get it. We'll figure it out. It'll be worth
Wow.
it. And the laser never paid for itself, but it led me to completely change. I mean, it changed my life, and
Yeah.
it also did lead me to this. And I have probably made enough here to have paid for it. So technically, it did pay for itself,
Yeah.
just in a roundabout sort of way. But like,
Yeah.
yeah, she had no hesitation. And if a thing's going to make you money, invest in it.
Yeah. Good deal. My laser didn't pay for itself, so I bought another one, and we're still in the same boat.
None of my stuff is paid for anything, but I've never focused on sales. So
Well,
That's not true. That's not true. This equipment has, we may not have taken the money and paid it off, but these things have more than paid for themselves.
I'd love to have one of those fiber lasers. I see
Yeah.
my friend Austin is doing some super cool stuff. I'd love to have one.
Yeah. I've got the fully enclosed Thunder.
yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the
that's
same
fine.
one Austin's got, except he's got
Yeah.
he's got the one with actual horsepower behind it.
Yeah. This is 50-watt Rakus.
I think
Yeah.
he's got the 150, but it's the same machine,
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'd love to
just
get one of those.
more
That's,
oomph and a higher electric bill.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the only thing that kind of makes me wish I had put more into like the okay. So you get jealous of the people that get sponsored and get the free stuff, and like it's easy to forget the amount of work that they put in. Like they
Yeah.
didn't get the stuff for free.
No.
They paid
No.
for it with their time.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
everything that Austin and our friend Morley or any of the stuff that those guys get,
Yeah.
they're paying for it. They're
Oh.
just paying for it with their time. So, but like it's easier for me. Like I'd rather pay something with my time than with my money because money's real and my time's
Mhm.
not. Apparently,
Mhm.
somehow that
Mhm.
works. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, I'm jealous. I wish I'd done more with the. Plus, getting the stuff early is also really cool because
Yeah.
you get it
Right.
before everybody else. There's something to be said for that.
Yeah.
So
Well, and you can make. Actually, I was just talking to a friend tonight. He's looking at. He borrowed or a friend of his loaned him the laser rust remover
oh, those are
thing.
cool. Yeah.
Those are cool.
Crazy watts. So he's looking at buying one, and he's like, I don't know. They're like he said they're like 12 grand, and I said. He owns a custom body shop. This guy's amazing, and his wife is a laserer, and stuff. So they're hustlers. They're amazing. Um, he I said that's an income stream in itself. Just that gun is an income stream. And he goes, yeah. He goes, I would probably have a guy just lasering all day.
Mm-hmm.
Just
And
clean and rust.
Yeah.
I said, dude, he goes, what do you think? And I said, I think you should spend a lot of money, go into a lot of debt, hustle for a year and a half to 2 years, and make all the money you can make because by then everybody's going to have one.
Yeah.
So get in on it early.
Yeah.
Do the investment, and then you take the cream off the top because in 2 years everybody's going to have it, and they'll be half the price of what you're getting now.
Yeah, if you were one of the first people that was like lasering logos on those Yeti tumblers,
crazy,
making crazy money. Now,
yeah, you can't get nothing for them.
Yeah,
I got a stack of unlasered mugs right there. Nobody wants to buy them.
yeah. But like and it's hard to remember. Like getting that mindset of the investment is difficult. Like our friend Austin always talks about his big lathe. He paid for it with 10-cent parts because he realized he was spending X amount of money to get this part manufactured,
Yeah.
and he had never had a lathe before. But if he got the lathe, he could make this little 5 or 10 cent part, and every time he made one, he kept track of it and how long. And within a couple of months, he had saved himself. Not to mention all the other stuff he did with this tool that he just added to his arsenal, but just this one little part of his process, he had saved enough money being able to do it in house to more than cover the cost of this massive machine. That if you
Yeah.
it would you go into debt to buy it, but you
To
don't.
look at it, it's daunting. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's amazing.
Hmm.
I think this is one of his. Uh,
Different guy.
Different guy.
Different guy. Yeah.
This guy's at Maker Camp, though. I
Yeah.
got this at Maker Camp. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I got that. I got one of the. I got one of those too at
Okay.
Maker Camp
Yeah.
from. I wasn't there last year. I was here the year before.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And I'm hoping to get there this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm.
Oh yeah, that's right. I'm 20 minutes from Maker Camp.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm still a little up in the air about if we're going this year or not, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. Really enjoy.
Yeah.
Really enjoy going.
We should probably think about the thing of the week here. You need a minute to think about it? We can have Al go first if you want.
However, whatever order you want to go, I got one.
Oh, you got one? Let's go.
Go
for it
ahead.
then.
Oh,
Yeah, I was
guess
going to
first.
talk about Hugh Forge because it's that guy created something that this isn't my thing of the week, but I want to touch on it real quick. That guy created he was one of the first people I've seen in a while that did something that fundamentally brought something new to the hobby. Like Hugh Forge was
Yeah.
was a completely different thing. So if for anybody that's interested in 3D printing, if you haven't seen what a Hue Forge is, look it up and actually get the software, because just downloading the models, you don't get the same results because you don't have the exact same filaments, and it's very, very specific to each filament behaves differently. So pay for if you're interested in all, you can do stuff with 3D printing that shouldn't be possible. Really awesome. But my actual thing is there's a TV show that's called Shrinking. It's on Apple, I think. I don't know. It was created by Brett Goldstein. He was the guy that played Roy Kent in Ted Lasso. So basically, long way around. There's certain shows that are just like warm hugs of a show, and Ted Lasso was that for me. Especially the first season, like there was something, the positivity of that show really helped me in a time when I was not in a great place. So I have a really warm spot in my heart for that show, or soft spot in my heart for that show. So one of the characters from that, main characters in that, is actually a writer, wrote this show called Shrinking. It's got Harrison Ford in it. It's got the guy, I can't, Jason Segel. He was in Forgetting Sarah Marshall. They're the main characters. Uh, it's a really, it's one of those shows that does the line between really, really funny and heart wrenching, and it balances it in a way that not a whole lot of shows can do. So I highly recommend it. There's 2 seasons out. It's a pretty solid show. It's not all laughs. There's some drama there too. So it's pretty solid. So it's called
Okay.
Shrink.
Awesome. That sounds good. What you got, Al?
Well, it's kind of a weird one. Uh, you're gonna enjoy editing because you're gonna put pictures of it up. But it's a creation you made here the last couple weeks. It's your Nintendo Super Mario Nintendo uh, art piece, I guess what I would call it.
Very cool.
But yeah, you can go find him on his Instagram. But he made a walnut Nintendo cartridge, and then spent what seemed to be 4 months doing inlay after inlay after inlay and epoxy. And it just, the reason I like it, not only because I like Jeff, he's all right, but the reason I like it is because the longer you look at it, the more stuff, if you're of that generation, you start to realize, oh, he's got the buttons. Oh, like this thing is so well done that you almost want to pick it up and shake it and blow in it.
I
So
did blow in it.
yeah, okay. So well done, and please go look at it. It's amazing. I'm sure in the show notes you'll put pictures of your creation.
Yeah, definitely Jeff's strong suit is pushing the tool,
Yeah,
pushing the
yeah,
like you
yeah,
experiment where most
yeah,
other people get a thing, they scratch the surface, you
yeah,
dig in and you make it weird. So
Yep.
yeah. It's
Well,
definitely weird, and
I
a good
try to
job, man.
keep it on brand.
What do you
And
got?
you can thank Emmett for that, who suggested it to me last summer. He saw somebody who had made a NES cartridge with a laser, and I think it was layered, but then it had like a lasered label on it for Mario or whatever game it was. And he sent me a picture of this, and he's like, "Hey, can you make me one of these?" And I said, "This looks like fun. I want to dig into that." So, and it actually didn't take that long. I think I probably spent, I don't know, less than a week making the cartridge last fall. And then I just set the project aside for a while because I wasn't sure what to do. I was originally thinking I would do wood inlays for the label, but I'd picked the Super Mario Brothers 3, and there's just too much detail in the character, and the pieces were too small, and the design just wasn't gonna work for that. And then I thought, well, maybe I need to try some epoxy, and ordered some Total Boat. At which point, um, and then I played some games with it to make areas that were smaller than my bit, because I carved the larger area and filled the whole thing with black, and then I carved out the areas inside of it that were even if the black outline on it is like 1/64th, and the bit I've got is 1/32nd, but because I put all the black in and then carved out the area to put inside the black, that allowed me to put outlines on it that were half the size of the smallest bit I've got. So there was a couple pockets that had to be done in order. Otherwise, I couldn't have gotten to the areas inside the areas where I couldn't, like, there's the, he's got the logo on his hat. He's got the M logo on the hat, and that's inside of like a white patch. Now, I couldn't have done around the white patch if I'd have done the M first. There was no room to go around that. But because I carved out the entire patch and filled that with white, and then came back and carved the M into it for only that area, that was, there was some fun with that. But overall, I like the resin. It's a new fun toy to play with. And after doing a couple of years of wood inlay, resin inlay is, it's kind of like inlay light. It's not as complicated. It's a lot more forgiving, assuming that your resin does exactly what your resin's supposed to do.
Right.
And I will absolutely vote for the Total Boat pump system. Matter of fact, I think it's even reasonable to make that my thing of the week, is to make, because I bought the relatively small, not the tiny containers, but not the gallon jugs either. Sort of the mid-sized containers, but they've got the pumps on them.
Mm-hmm.
And once you get those things primed, you just decide how much resin you need, and you give it 2 pumps of resin, full pumps, and then you go over to the other container and you give it 2 full pumps of the hardener, and you stir that stuff up with whatever color changing stuff you want in it. And I did, because I mean, this label was 7 colors, and I did yellow as the first and the last color. So there's 8 resin pours in there, and every one of them cured perfectly. I mean, I pour it at night, take some pictures, and go to bed. I get up the next morning, and it was hard as a rock. You could tap, tap, tap on it. I'd still let it sit for the rest of the day because I don't have time to work on it till evening again anyway. So I mean, all my cures got 22 hours worth of sit time on them, but every cure perfect every single time.
Total Bolt is a
Um,
good product for sure.
the other thing that I want to mention that is not a thing of the week. When I first saw it, I thought this might qualify for a thing of the week, and I said I want to look into this some more. Now that I've looked in it some more, I've decided I will not be recommending it, but I do find it an odd curiosity, and moving forward of 3D printing capabilities. I keep seeing an ad for a product called Loop.
Mm.
I don't know if you've seen Loop yet, but it's basically a system where you can take all your leftover filament, whether it's the last 3 feet off the roll you can't use, or it's all the baskets of poop that fall out of the back every time it does color changing. But you can dump any filament you want as long as it's all the same type. You don't mix your PETGs and your PLAs, but you just dump all your PLA into this thing, and it's got a grinder and a heater and an extruder, and you just basically dump all your trash filament into it and push a few buttons, and it'll grind it down to a super fine powder, and it'll force that through an extruder, and it will literally wind you a brand new roll of filament out of your trash, which seems to be fantastic recycling technology and a fantastic idea for a machine. However, if you pre-order before they launch, you can buy it for the nice low price of $1,500. But if you wait until after it's out on the shelf, it's a $2,500 machine. And you would have to have a print farm with 60 machines running 24 by 7 to generate enough waste to save yourself a $15 roll of filament by the end of the week. So it's not exactly a cost effective
Yeah,
product,
yeah,
but
I love those numbers, man. When somebody figures that out, that's amazing.
yeah.
yeah, you would have to have 60 printers running nonstop to generate enough
Wow.
waste that you could create a full roll of filament for free from your waste. And
Which is a $60,000 investment before you buy filament for those printers.
Yeah, and most people that are running that many printers aren't doing the multicolor because you're talking. It's not just 60
true.
printers; it's 60 printers doing multicolor, which
Yeah,
most people don't do in
yeah,
print farm. Most print farms are solid color stuff, which has almost no waste. So it's.
yeah. And if
Right.
you're printing with 60 printers, you don't have the time to be
There's
making your own
I've
filament either.
wasted a lot of filament. I've wasted a lot of filament. I've thrown away a lot of filament in the years of me printing. Hundreds and hundreds of rolls I've gone through. I have I have not even come close to $1,500 worth of trash. I mean, I guess it's if you really care about
Yeah.
putting that much trash in the landfill or whatever, but it
I
was,
found as a product, it's got potential as a future product,
mm-hmm.
and I understand that the first one out the door to market is going to be ridiculously overpriced, but I don't know that they're going to sell enough of these machines for $1,500, let alone $2,500, that they're going to be able to make a version 2, because I think it thing's going to crash. I mean, it's
I mean,
I find it as an interesting niche and a way to move forward with technology, but not at that price point for anybody.
Yeah, I'm going to download a video on my Microsoft Zune.
I mean, especially, I mean, technically considering that you can do this a similar thing with a blender from a Goodwill and an old hot end, you know, an old trash hot end. Like there's guys that have made like filament recycling things from trash parts. Now, I mean, granted, their product is it's a nice, clean, like sleek looking product, and their claims as far as the main thing with like recycled filament like that is getting it has to be very consistent is the thickness, and their claim is 0.01, which is again one better than any the good manufacturers only advertise 0.02 tolerance, and they're saying 0.01 off their machine. I don't know.
So could you chuck soda bottles into this thing?
Yeah, actually, soda bottles are actually one of the easiest. You can build a soda bottle. You can go to. I'm sure there's actually been
I've
a
seen
viral.
them peeling them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
a video that's made its round on Instagram a couple of times where it's you take a soda bottle and you get soda bottle goes in one side and comes out the other side and film it, and that's just PETG. That's
yeah,
all it is.
yeah.
But there's a lot to be said for the additives and stuff that are in the different filaments, and those additives don't always play well together, even if it's all the same
Yeah.
material. So,
Yeah.
not all PLAs want to mix or will mix in a way that gives you a consistent, predictable product at the end. Like, a lot of people say I print off of, I use fairly expensive filament, and one of the reasons why I use fairly expensive filament is because every roll is exactly the same, and I can
Consistency.
trust it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's you can't do that if you're just throwing trash into a bin. So
No,
Yeah.
probably not.
Yeah.
Okay, so I like to ask everybody what their dream tool would be. If you could have any one tool delivered for free, what would you pick, and what are you going to do with it?
Mine's going to be an A1 Mini. And I'm going to print something, God damn it. No, seriously. Yeah, a 3D printer of some sort. Yeah.
okay, yeah, that's a very achievable dream.
Yeah. Well, keep it, keep them close.
Keep it real. Um, dream tool. Honestly, probably one of those really hardcore 5-axis CNC, like one of the
The robot arm.
yeah robot arm.
Yeah, that's your
Honestly,
buddies
like
too.
it's I if I could go back in time, I wish I had gone like there's that where you have that branch where if you go this way you're a metal worker, if you go this way you're a woodworker.
Yep.
I went wood. In hindsight, I wish I'd have gone metal,
Huh.
and I would like the idea, the ability to machine manufacturing metal is incredible to me.
Yeah. You could have a Tormac farm behind you
Yeah.
instead
Yeah.
of printers.
Cormac or Haas kind of thing would probably be a good tool for you then.
Yeah. So I mean, if you're gonna have a dream tool, why not make it like $100,000 dream tool? I mean,
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
nobody,
Well, I've already picked all the $100,000
I was
ones.
gonna say nobody's dream car is a Camry, man. It's always
No, usually not.
Got me a sweet Civic.
they're
Yeah.
good cars. They have their place.
Yeah.
They're wonderful, and more people have
Yeah.
them. But it's not
Yeah.
a dream car.
Yeah.
Ford Pinto.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. What about you? What do you got?
Oh, I'm still on robot arms, and if I run out of money for robot arms, I still want to. I really want to try one of those. Oh shit! What do you call them now? I forget what EDM.
The slicer. Yeah.
It's the electrified wire that cuts through metal with a micron thickness, so the pieces fall back together, so you can't even see the lines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those things are cool, but I'm torn between that and the full robot arm. You know, I think those are my definite top choices for the tools that I'd like that I don't want to ever have to pay for.
Yeah. We need to get Twig and Bot to swing an EDM wire on his machine.
Jesus. Yeah, I don't know if that thing's got enough
Amperage.
yeah, well, amperage maybe, but the fine motor control has to be like, I mean, I know he's got a lot of tight control on that, but those EDMs are, cut micron lines.
Yeah.
It's always been the joke that if I won the lottery, I'd live in a 500 square foot house that backed up to the most ridiculous shop you've ever seen.
Right.
Be like the White House,
500-foot
but you live on the porch.
5,000-foot shop.
Yeah, and all the ridiculously expensive, mostly only ever owned by company type machines.
Yeah.
That never get used because it's still a hobby shop. So, but
I lived out in the Midwest for a little while, and I actually knew a guy who had he lived in an airplane hangar, and one end of the hangar was a 2-story apartment, and he literally had a balcony and overlooking his hangar, and the whole side of his house open, and he had planes in and out.
The heating bill, though.
What was it like? Jesus. Maybe was it Top Gun Maverick? Maybe it's an airplane hangar, but then an Airstream parked inside the hangar, and you just
he built the one end of it is in a house.
That to me Perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
Love it.
Like those Google barndominiums or
Oh,
do YouTube barndominium
yeah, for
tours.
sure.
Like these
Because yeah, I mean,
crazy.
the only reason I need any space is for the tools and the crafting. Like the actual living part of my house could be a
Yeah,
tiny
tiny
home.
house.
Tell me that.
Yeah, yeah.
No, you're gonna spend all your time in the shop anyway.
Exactly.
You just need some place to cook, some place to watch TV occasionally, and some
Yeah.
place to sleep.
I've slept right there, right in front of this.
Now, what did you do wrong that she sent you out there? That's the question.
Now, what
you
did you buy that
yeah,
was so
yeah.
ridiculously priced?
It was that.
It was the Laguna.
If you like that machine so much, you sleep with it.
All right, well, I guess that's what we got to do. That's what we got to do.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. No, I got a good one too. She's the shop is 28 feet from the house. That's how she just let me do it right here. I didn't even have to find a building. We just built the building and everything.
Yeah.
There you go.
But
Okay,
Jacob, thank you so much, man. This has been a.
definitely.
I feel like we finally dove into a like a subject and stayed with it.
Well, I definitely like. I didn't have the
Yeah.
credentials of an artist like Chris, or I mean, I've seen some of the guests that you've had on like that. Yeah, I'm just a guy that downloads stuff and pushes buttons. So the only thing I've got is that I can talk at length about the machines. So I'll
Well,
lean into that a little bit.
Well,
that,
you had the knowledge that I was in the mood to talk about.
yeah.
I wanted to hit a little bit more of the 3D printing with a little bit more depth to it as far
Mhm.
as the actual printing.
I think it's like laser cutting is fun, but I think 3D printing is important, and I
Mhm.
mean that because it's what it opens up for people, and it's how multifunctional it is. Like laser cutting is cool, and you can make things
Mhm.
and you can personalize things and blah blah blah.
Mhm.
But as
Mhm.
far as actually manufacturing, I don't think
Yeah.
it's not on the same level as. And same thing with the CNC. Honestly, it's got its place. It's a wonderful tool.
Yeah.
There's certain stuff you can only do with it, and honestly, there's probably some building like the way that they're like rethinking the way that some stuff is being built, like
Mhm.
houses and everything, and CNC parts and stuff like that, has a place. But as far as just cross disciplinary multifunction, I think 3D printing is an important technology. I
Mhm.
think a lot of the pushback that you see from people, oh, it's just
It's always
it's not
yeah.
real making. It's just
Mhm.
the computer's doing all blah blah blah. Like that's I think that, and that was just I think you guys touched on this with Chris. Uh, I think if you go back in history, anytime there's a technology, there's somebody that's saying that's not the. I guarantee you that when the first dude came up with the atlatl, there was some other caveman that said,
Mhm.
"Well, when I was a kid, we just throw the spears by arm, and if you can't throw the spear with just your
Mhm.
arm, you aren't. It's not really throwing the spear." You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Every new
Yeah.
technology
Yeah.
has.
And if you're wondering where those people are today, the naysayers and everything, they're in all the Facebook groups.
Yeah,
Like it's every single and every time there was a new technology, there's the
Yep.
pushback, there's the
Yep.
moving forward, and then there's the,
Mhm.
like it comes in, it takes the world by storm. Like people overuse it, people use it incorrectly. You have people that push back on it, and then
Mhm.
eventually it settles in to just being another tool. I
Mhm.
mean, power tools were a new thing at one point.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
the photograph was a new thing at one point, and it changed the art community. Like there's every new technology, and to think that people and when people say it's not real, blah blah. Blah look at Vermeer. Like Vermeer, one of the greatest painters in history, was absolutely using optics
Mhm.
to. I mean, he was like. There's a pretty convincing argument that he was tracing, quote unquote, trading. He was using a tool that would help him see exactly where the light was supposed to go on his paintings.
Mm.
There's a movie called Tim's Vermeer that really goes into how that worked. But it's basically the guy that we put up as the greatest painter ever. If you saw somebody doing the technique that he was using now, people would call it cheating.
Mhm.
But because history has held him up, it's not cheating when he did it. Because people don't realize that even back in the day, new technologies came out, true artists find ways to find that technology and
Hmm.
push that technology forward. Just like, I'll throw Jeff in there. Like most people get a CNC and it only works in like 2 dimensions or whatever. He's like, well, what if I cut the table out, flip it on its end? All of a sudden now I can use this 2 dimensional thing to carve all 4 dimensions. But it
Yeah,
takes
yeah, but mine's faster.
well, fair enough. It takes people like that to move the technology forward. And
Yeah,
all the while, you're going to have the people saying, "Oh, that's not a real thing," until it becomes so commonplace. Then everybody says, that's the real thing," and it's the next new thing. It's not the
yeah,
real thing. It's not
yeah,
You're not a real person if you do this thing. So
yeah.
it's
That's why everybody's got a CNC
I
now.
think nobody.
Yeah.
It's if you look at stuff through the lens of history, all of the stuff people say make a lot like it doesn't hold near as much weight.
Yeah, well said.
I don't know.
I literally told my stepdaughter today. I was like, "Listen, you got to stop thinking about things like like lost jobs and stuff like that." I was like, "Horse farms are out of business because the car was invented. I mean, before that, people had to have 10 horses because you couldn't ride them. So like, yeah, technology moves. The needle keeps moving forward."
My favorite is the Lamp Lighters Union, because they used to have gas street lights on
Hmm.
every corner, and there was a guy called a lamplighter, and he would walk around town every evening and turn the gas on and spark the fire up so the light on the street corner was on,
Oh,
and then they would go back around in the morning and turn all the gas valves off to turn the lights back off, and they were absolutely outraged by the invention of the incandescent light bulb, and they
oh yeah,
lobbied to prevent electric lights from being put up.
oh yeah. Anytime that like, somebody's when anybody, especially like company, when they're pushing back on a thing, why look and see why they're pushing back on it.
Yeah, yeah.
When a thing that makes a whole lot of sense doesn't happen, look at who's preventing it from happening and see where the money. Like, yeah, for sure. But, I
Hmm.
mean, talk
Hmm.
about the lamplighters. What about the knocker uppers? You ever heard of
The
a
what?
knocker upper? They would walk around in factory towns and tap on the window to wake people up because people didn't have alarm clocks back in the day. And when factory work started,
Okay.
people had to get like when you had farms, you just got up with the sun. It didn't
Yeah,
matter.
yeah,
As soon as
yeah.
there's factories, you have to be at work on your shift. So, but you
Mm,
didn't have alarm clocks because they weren't. There was a gap between the time
mhm,
when
mhm.
people had to be in a place at a certain time and a time when everybody had accurate timekeeping. There was a space in the middle, and you
Yeah.
had knocker uppers. They went around, tapped on window. Hey, it's time to get up, so you can go to work, and they just walk around, and that was their job.
Yep.
And then somebody
Well,
bought a rooster.
As soon as somebody got an alarm clock, as soon as the alarm clock was invented, that job just disappeared.
Yeah,
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 well, and they learned to do something else,
Yeah,
or they got hungry.
for
yeah.
sure.
All right. Well, I think we probably wrapped up about everything we need for today.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I'd definitely like to thank Jacob for coming on the show. And everybody who enjoyed our episode should follow Jacob on Instagram. He's at Other Dog Designs, and he'll occasionally post something every once in a while. Hopefully, he'll post more things because he still makes lots of cool stuff. You just got to remember to take pictures, because
That's the hard part.
but that's okay. I mean, not everybody has to have a big outward facing. We don't all have to do it for everybody else. Sometimes we just do things for ourselves, and that's okay. We need to make that okay too. I also like to thank my co-host Al for taking the time to hang out again. And
Always
I
fun.
need to thank all the listeners for tuning in. And a huge thank you to our current patrons for their support. So many thanks to Adam from BKR Customs, Ed Swanson of Ed's Clocks and More, and our friend Eric from Overall Makerworks. And if you enjoyed listening and would like to support the show, you can share it with your friends, you can leave a review, or you can join our Patreon. You can find our Patreon at patreon.com/digifabricators. You can leave podcast reviews on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Podchaser, Spotify, Podcast Addict, Audible, and Good Pods. We do have a Discord server open to all listeners. Our patrons will also get access to an exclusive patron channel in our server where they get to hear about our next guest before the public finds out. Direct links to our Discord server and Patreon page are in the Digifabricator's Instagram bio, which you should also be following, which is at digi-fabricators. And if you or someone you know does cool things with their digital tools, please let us know. We've only got so many friends to invite, and then we could use some suggestions to keep things going. I can be found most places as a weird guy, and Al can be found under New York Woodworks, which is NY Woodworks with an X. Thanks again to everybody, and we will catch you on the next episode. Sweet. Nailed it.